Excellent. Okay, so welcome guys to another episode of the Kickback Brown Girl Football Diaries. As you know, my name is Nirali, and today is such an exciting episode because I've got two amazing guests on the show. So with me today, I've got Miriam Walker Khan. So she is the diversity and inclusion reporter for Sky Sports. And if you don't know her, look up Brown Girl Sport on Instagram, and you'll see all the amazing work that she's done, all the amazing interviews that she's done, behind the scene with lots of athletes as well. And then we've got Aman Dosanj. Now, I'm very, very excited for this. Not only is Aman just probably one of the most inspirational people that I've spoken to, had the pleasure of speaking to, but also she played football back in the day, not just played football, kicked it about or anything like that. No, no, no. She played for England. She was the first Asian lioness, South Asian lioness for England, and also, I believe, the only South Asian signing for Arsenal. So, Amin and Miriam, I'd firstly just like to say thank you so much for taking the time out to be here today to have a chat about everything to do with sports and diversity and inclusion and what more we can do and talk about your lived experiences as well. But before we move on to that, obviously, I've only given a very, very short snippet of what I know of you guys. I would love for you guys to just expand a little bit more about who you are and what makes you you. So, Miriam, we'll start off with you, if that's okay.
Thank you for that intro. That was lovely. So I'm really excited to be here, to be on this podcast, to be chatting to you guys. Um, I'm a diversity and inclusion reporter at Sky Sports News, and like you say, like on the side, I do Brown Girl Sport. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't one of those people who grew up wanting to be a journalist. I did not. It never crossed my mind because, like, if I turn on the TV now, like I can't, there's not a lot of people, especially in like on Look North and stuff, that maybe that's harsh, but there's not a lot of people growing up that look like us in the media, right? So it didn't even, I never thought that I would become a journalist. And then I was an athlete, so I was a sprinter for 12 years of my life, probably about 11 years too long. But I was always like injured, ill. I had like an illness when I was younger, so I was on like chemotherapy and I was trying to train 5 days a week. I was training in like the same group as Jess Ennis, which it was chaos for me being ill. So I probably should have given up a bit earlier, but I just loved everything about athletics. It was a huge part of my family. My mum was a sprinter. My grandparents met at a track in Hillsborough. So yeah, like it was very important to me. I played a bit of football, but I was not great. But I always was kind of interested, I guess, in like the intersections of race in sport because my dad was a semi-professional footballer. He was born in Pakistan, came to Sheffield when he was 10, I think. And my mum always said that he didn't make it because he was Asian. And actually, my mum and dad don't like each other at all. So if my mum's saying that, I know that there's some like truth to it. And I knew that from an early age. So yeah, I think I've always been interested in race, and I was probably exposed to racism the first time through football at Bramall Lane with him. So yeah, and then I think weirdly, just from being a really young age, I was kind of like fascinated by like race, like as a social construct, what is it? And then did like my dissertation at university on like police brutality in the civil rights movement, and um, just was really interested in it. And it wasn't until I was older that I was like, oh, there's ways that I can kind of combine this work and anti-racism work with like journalism, sports journalism. So I just kind of fell into sports journalism when I was injured one year at uni, and then it all escalated. I like when I got on the BBC journalism trainee scheme as like the sport trainee one year, which was just the best thing that's ever happened to me. Then I worked as like an assistant producer, like kind of worked my way up to a reporter at BBC Sport, and then moved to Sky a year ago. So yeah, that's me.
Wow, that's amazing. That's a lot of stuff that I definitely didn't know there, but I think the thing that kind of screams to me is that a lot of resilience, a lot of understanding, a lot of growth, and a lot of opportunity as well. And it seems like as if every time that there was an opportunity, you're like, I'm grabbing it. I'm
Yeah,
resilient. I got this. I can do it.
I
And it
never said
sounds like as if your father was quite a big influence in terms of like not guiding you, but you kind of absorbed those experiences and thought, well, how can I change it? How can I make it better for me and others?
yeah, I think so. It was weird because a therapist said that to me once, and like I'm not close with my dad. I don't talk to him that much, and he's lived in the US since for like 22 years, so I've never really like had him around. But I think just like knowing his story, knowing that like that is still half of where I came from, like his what he experienced, especially in Sheffield playing football. Um, yeah, I think it always just interested me in a weird way, and I just always wanted to learn a bit more. And now at Sky, for the past year, I've been working on a documentary about South Asian footballers and like the issues, the barriers, all the stuff that we kind of talk about every few years and then forget. And then yeah, so I think it's always been close to my heart, and not necessarily because I'm close to my dad, but I just think it affects us all, right? It affects the whole community, and it has affected my brothers and people close to me. So I'm really keen that we don't stop talking about it, which is why I'm here.
Wait, that's amazing. So like actually that's a good segue to you, Aman, actually. So give us a little bit of background about you and how you sort of grown up in the sporting culture and where life has sort of taken you.
Lying down for this one on a couch. Yeah, so my brother, I'm one of three. I've got an older brother, younger sister. My brother wanted a brother. He got me, and he just tried to turn me into his brother, his younger brother. So he just used to take me out in the garden, fire shots at me, and then I got pretty good at it. So I was actually in the school system playing for my school team, the only girl on the team at the age of 6. And then from there, my mum was actually a beautician. So she had 3 kids. She went to night school. She got her beautician kind of certificates. And then she had a home business, which was literally, she converted our shed next to our house into a beauty salon. And so somebody from Red Star Southampton, which later got affiliated with Southampton Football Club, told her that they've got an under-10s team. And so then she started to take me over there. At the time, she would just literally take me, stay in the car, and then I'll just kind of go back afterwards. That system was really cool because there were so many older players mentoring the younger kids and actually training us. And so when it came to me being a goalkeeper, I had Sue Bucket, who was England international, like literally there. And one day after our practice, she goes to me, "Oh, can I speak to your parents?" So as the middle child, I'm always like, "Uh-oh, what the fuck did I do? Can we swear on this podcast?"
Yeah, you can swear, it's absolutely fine.
So middle child of you, by the way.
And so I took her over to my mom, and then I was just like, okay, what did I do? And she literally told her that with the right encouragement and training, I could play for England. And that was such a huge turning point in my career, to have someone who has done it all. Like, you see how many caps that Sue had. She was playing until she was like 50. Which she wasn't very much taller than me as well. And obviously I'm a hobbit. And it was just cool that somebody would see something in me. And it was actually really nice when I last came back into the country in 2022, just before the Euros. We had a conversation, and even though she's got early dementia, she was still she firstly recognized me and said that she never really paid attention to the other kids that were in the setup, only kind of me. And it was really lovely to hear as an adult what she saw in me as a kid, because we don't have that many opportunities to do that as well. So from there, my parents were on board. Like, they would take me. We found a goalkeeper coach in he was in the Bournemouth youth academy kind of setup. But it's that same thing, is just that as soon as you're a girl, everyone's like, there's that ultimatum of, okay, I'm going to give you one chance and that's it. If you're wasting my time, then it was like very much kind of like that. And then he actually was my coach until I went to the States. So he's been my coach all the way through. We changed his perceptions just by doing it. And then my whole team at Southampton were training with the boys in the Bournemouth setup. Plus I ended up so I played for England in 99. The first opportunities that the girls actually had for an under 16 schoolgirls team, we made history with me playing for England. And I believe Michael Chopra was 3 months after me. And so that means that we did it first. And then it was just kind of escalated from there. Like I've always been an Arsenal fan. I was the kid who always went to like the Southampton. I was at the Dell, dressed head and toe in Arsenal, like a full tracksuit, full everything, and I'm just like the kid in the Saints section going like, what are you gonna do? I'm a kid. Like I was that little Larry kid. And so, and even when I was playing for Southampton, we would watch the Arsenal women come, and I'd be watching and waiting for Marianne Spacey and Rachel Yankee and everyone. And I just sent a picture of me with Marianne Spacey to both of you recently. And I'm wearing my brother's hand-me-down kit, which is like 5 sizes too big. And then to go from there to get, I went training with Arsenal. And then they invited me to their camp after I played for England. So we went to Ireland. I was the youngest in the team, and they signed me right there. So after that, just kind of went into, like, I was a school kid. I was still doing my GCSEs. My poor mom, like the amount of sacrifices that our parents have to even go through just to do these things. And like, I've always been a lifelong Arsenal fan, so they weren't ever going to stand in my way as well. So I would finish school, come home, quickly eat, get changed. We'd go to Southampton Central Station. We travel an hour and a half to get to Waterloo. From Waterloo is another like half an hour or so to get to Arsenal. From Arsenal is a 10-minute walk. Then we start like running for 2.5 hours, and then in the ball court. Then my dad was actually a contractor, so he was an IT guy. So he would pick us up after work because he was contracting in London. So he would come pick us up. I'd get home for like midnight, and then next day again, school. And so, but then obviously when you just want to do something, you just make it work, right? So that's kind of what we did. Then afterwards, I started getting, once I was doing my A-levels, it was getting a little too tricky to balance school and still going to them. So we spoke to the setup at Southampton, and then I was training with the boys academy. And I was one of the first girls to get accepted into a boys academy with the Premier League. So I was playing when Theo Walcott he was a couple of years younger than me. And so he was in the Southampton setup at that time as well. Again, like that same thing. Oh, if you're wasting our time, we're gonna just like part ways, right? But we managed to convince them and just get things done. So yeah, so I after that, I had a scholarship in the States. That's also when Bend It Like Beckham was coming out. And so then people started to pay attention to my story. And then after that, just life took me in many, many different directions. So I've always had a background with Kick It Out and Football for All. So I was appointed one of 14 ambassadors for the Football for All campaign. They got my name wrong every time that I went there. Like I'm like literally the only brown kid on the panel. But you know, I wasn't there for them. I was there to hopefully tell my story to as many people as I could and try and get more kids, period, like whether boys, girls, like whatever gender, whatever, whoever they are, like brown people can be role models for anyone, right? So just get people into the game. And then yeah, I just started I am kind of a storytelling chef. Every dinner on a farm is based on a different story about sustainability and fairness and equality, and we try and build culture around food. So like you can't take away things trend when you take away the brown person, right?
Mm.
Turmeric latte, for instance, people calling it chai tea when it means TT. So I'm trying to put the people back into the equation, because without the people, there's no culture. And so just trying to educate people that way, take it back to the villages in India, and like seasonal and local, and no sprays and stuff. We do fun things like dehydrating some leftover wine lees and making holy color and having a color fight after the dinner and just creating cool memories. So all that experiential marketing from my background has gone in there. I've also, when I was at uni, my degree is, because obviously I like to do all of the things, business management with sports science, majoring in marketing. And but I was going to do a marketing dissertation, but they told me that I had too many business thingies, so I had to do a sports science one. So my dissertation was on the misunderrepresentation of British Asians in sport, which was really weird, because in academia, you're not supposed to say I, and you're not really, everything's supposed to be a third party, plus you're supposed to be objective. But how can I be objective when all of this like bullshit stuff that people are saying that is wrong with South Asians? And then I'm like, well, I did it, so that everything that you just said in your research is wrong.
So what kind of things was that you found that people were saying that was incorrect, untrue, that you had to challenge?
Well, I'm 5'2", so I can't really talk about being too small, because but I still managed to play for the Arsenal first team and for England, even though I was a hobbit, because brown girl can jump. And so that was one. The diet, people saying that we're only interested in education, our parents wouldn't want us to be in education. The whole religion, that Muslims pray 5 times a day, and all of these kind of things. What happens during Ramadan? Like, Black players have been doing this stuff for centuries, and yet it was still always looking at what's the fault in us rather than what's systemically wrong, and like adding critical race theory to this. Like, where is the thing saying that, okay, well, these structures are in place, capitalism is here, and then you've got racism that is literally underpins everything, like capitalism underpins all of that shit. And so it was like all of the things that were completely wrong. And my parents moved over similarly, but like my dad was 4 when he moved over. So if you spoke to him on the phone, you'd think he's some middle-aged white dude because of his accent, right? So they didn't necessarily have those barriers when they came in, compared to, other Sikh families who have a turban and the accent and all these kind of things. Like both my parents were the youngest in their families too. So it's almost like when I start reading about a lot of the players now coming in terms of the women, it's very much similar to their kind of recounts, in terms of it's almost as though I'm second generation, but I'm first generation. And I think that's kind of an interesting thing as well. But it also was that growing up, I had cousins who literally asked me, because my dad's oldest brother, he's like 15 years older than my dad or something. So when we were really young, there was 15 year age gap between us. And so they were saying, because I was playing football, are you a girl or are you a boy? And they would tease me about that. And then even when I played for England, it's just like, these are things that girls are not supposed to do, and especially not brown girls. Like, how many times do we play sport, and we're allowed to play sport, we're allowed to play with our cousins and the boys and whatever to a certain age, and then we're suddenly, we fall in love with a sport, and then we're expected not to do this anymore because it's not appropriate.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And those are things that my parents never believed in, because they were like, makes her happy and she's good at it, and it gets her out of trouble. Like, you learn so much stuff, like in terms of discipline, in terms of team building, in terms of social skills. You learn all of these things from being in a club kind of setup as well.
So your parents had your back with that kind of thing, isn't it? Like, whenever people try to kind of say, well, why are you doing this? At least they had, you had that support from them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my grandma would my grandma was an Arsenal fan. Like, we would watch the footy on the TV, and like she called she called David Seaman Muchawala, so mustache guy kind of thing. So she didn't know their names, but she had like, she knows who they are. Even if he was wearing he wasn't in his Arsenal kit, he was wearing an England shirt, she still knew him. Like I was the kid growing up that I was always an England fan, and I always just dreamt of playing for England. And then and so it was just like I always had an England shirt on, and I would cry every time we lost, because we lost a lot. And that's the thing, it's just like I would sneak out of weddings and stuff, but my parents always knew. And they were my dad was, he wasn't ever very religious or anything like that. Like neither of my parents are that kind of into the whole religion thing. But my mom obviously had to stay because she had to just like make sure that she was the face of the family there. And she probably got lots of flack from people, especially when you see this person in the wedding video and then all of a sudden they just like disappear to go play games and stuff. But my dad enjoyed it because he was my partner in crime. It meant he got out of going to the temple and going to events and stuff. And then it was just like literally same kind of situation with Bender, like Beckham coming back for the party, and after training and coming back to things. So
it's really interesting that you talk about how you start playing, you get to a certain point, and then there's an expectation for you to stop. Because to be honest with you, that's exactly what happened with me. So I played for the school team and everything like that. But at that time, like my parents didn't know of any pathways or anything like that. So even though like, I would play as a defender or in that sort of thing, there wasn't any pathways at all. And I did keep getting injured. I can't, my amount of times where I've hurt my ankle, I've got weak ankles now. But it's like my mom has said, I still remember my mom saying to me, you've hit puberty now, you've developed, you can't go and play football with the boys anymore because they're gonna say things and they're gonna look at you differently, and you have to focus on your studies now. You can't go down the park and play football or take football seriously because that's not a viable job for you to do. That's not job security. So then I stopped playing football. And I'm glad that I've got back into it. I'm so glad that I got back into it. I'm so glad that actually that passion has been reignited. And I don't know where or how it even came from. It just kind of sparked, and it was just like, oh my God, I felt like as if I was reliving like my youthful days, if you like. I still remember my first match was at Leicester City, Filbert Street. I had a teddy bear named Filbert as well that we used to play wrestling on and stuff like that, me and my sister, you know. But all of that basically had to stop as soon as kind of you got older. And why does it need to stop, So I mean, Miriam, like from like you've spoken to so many athletes, so many people with diverse backgrounds, like what have you found like in your lived experience, but also from what you found from other athletes as to the barriers that are facing in terms of continuing that journey in sport?
Yeah, I think I don't really like talking about like family stuff and cultural stuff, because I think that's kind of a slippery slope to go down if you only have like your own lived experience, and everyone's is so different. But my dad was not around when I was growing up, and then I remember on my 11th birthday he called our house phone and he was like, happy birthday, are you still running in shorts? And I said yeah. And I was like excited to tell him, like I was smashing it. I was like the quickest girl in Sheffield for my age, and like I loved it. And I was like running faster than a lot of the boys in Sheffield then as well. And he was like, oh, you're gonna burn in hellfire. And so yeah, he was like, you wearing shorts, you're gonna burn in hell. So I then like started crying, and my mum was like, no, we're not doing this. And I didn't talk to him for years. But I think that I was lucky in a way that he wasn't in the UK, because I kind of was able to go and wear shorts. But for years I was wearing shorts, and I was like, I know that I'm allowed to do this because my mum says I'm allowed, but I'm also a bit worried that I'm going to hell. And also everyone's now wearing crop tops on my athletics team, and I know that I'm allowed to do that because my mum said I'm allowed. But if I'm wearing shorts and I'm going to hell, if I wear a crop top, I'm probably definitely going to go to hell. So I'm like going through all this in my head, and then you're a teenage girl. And I just think like everyone's got their own story, right? And everyone has their own reason, like you just said, that they, especially girls of color, that they drop out. And I think especially at the age of like 14, 15, a lot of young girls of color in the UK drop out, and that is for so many reasons. Could be religious, cultural, like families not supporting. A lot of it is access to the sport. I had to get a bus and then a tram in like an area of Sheffield that I wouldn't want to be walking around in now on my own at night, let alone when I was 13, 14. And then a lot of the time I'd come back and it'd be like 10 o'clock, and like my mum was a single parent raising three of us, and it was tricky for her to like cook for us all. Sometimes she gave us lists, which was amazing, but it's so, you have to really, really, like Aman was saying, you have to really love the sport to be doing all that at 10 o'clock, and then you've got A levels and you've got to work. I was working like two different jobs, and like you have to afford it as well. All these things that like you don't have when you're a teenager. And I think, yeah, there's just that extra layer when you are from a different background that like the world doesn't set you up for, right? So I think it differs person to person, but I also think the systems just don't care about us. I don't think people care about getting South Asian women into football or other sports the way that they say they care. Like everyone kind of says it's really important, but like what are you actively doing? What are you where are you getting these girls from? What are you doing in terms of like education? How are you getting them to the grounds? You know, I think people don't see it as an issue that is for them to solve. I think they see it as an issue that is for the communities themselves to solve, and that's not what racism is. Like racism is not a brown and black people problem. So yeah, it's difficult. I think there's so many reasons, but I'd like to think it was getting better. I think like all the reporting that's recently been done, especially on like the Lionesses and how white they are, has probably made people look into like the pathways. And I think a lot of the England setup is because of accessibility and a lack of accessibility, and kids in London were traveling like 3 hours out to go to training grounds, and it just wasn't, you just can't do that when you're a teenager. So I think like it needs resources, it needs funding, it needs people to take it seriously, and you know, treat it the same as like Premier League academies. If you're sending like a kid a car to go and train at an academy, or a minibus for a few kids, why on earth are you not doing that for the women? Like, why is that not happening? Like, we have to do better. So I think there's so many reasons. I really hope it's getting better. I don't know, I guess we'll see in like 10 years, right?
True. I think we will. I think we will see it in 10 years, because I mean, we get told that the academies are kind of diversifying, they are trying to do more things, but we won't know until we actually get the outcomes. And you're right in saying that it is completely multifaceted. So like so like I said, it's about knowing the pathways. Like my mum didn't know about the pathways. Even today, she'll be like, do you know what? I really wish I did know, because you had so much potential. I really wish that that you could have done this. I can see the potential in you doing this now. Same thing with my dad. He says the same thing. So we're talking about a good like 20 years ago now. Like that's good in the fact that we're having same problems now. It kind of just shows that those same problems are there.
That's the most frustrating part for me, especially because, you know, representation isn't about who's first. Representation is about opportunities, firstly. Like to like when I played in 99, that was the first chance that girls had actually had to go into the England setup at that young of an age. And we were able to do that, and then the year later, Pamijuti, first time that a South Asian woman was able to sign a pro contract as well with Fulham. Fulham were the only club in the country at that point to be pro, but it's just like those are opportunities that if there were opportunities for women, then, you know, we were able to do that. But then now looking at everything, it's just like, why are we still having the same conversations 24 years on? And I've been having these conversations since I was a kid. All of the organizations from Kick It Out to the FA, it's great having like all these white people just parading you around as you're the solution to all of these things. And like I have a conversation and speak to people, but I specifically remember going, so Southampton were moving from the Dell to St. Mary's, and St. Mary's was the South Asian area of the city. So we didn't live there, but that's like, when you have a community like that, it tends to act as a safe space. Like people come, they left their home, they go to another place, they create community, it's a safe space. But then now when you go to that area, there is so much gentrification, and it's just, it hurts my heart to know that, okay, so these people created a safe space and now they had to leave their home for a second time, right? And I remember speaking to the people in, like, these are little kids who have guttis and just like, they didn't look, I've got a lot of privilege because I'm a fair skinned brown person, right? I don't have an accent in terms of like an Indian accent to contend with, and I came from a very progressive family, and you know, we don't go to the Kotora every Sunday or whatever it was like. So there were certain things, and I can only speak about my experience and my lived experience, and it's going to be completely different from everyone else. And I think that's also an issue as well. I think when white people look at the problems, they just expect there to be a one fixed solution to like the whole of the racism problem. And that's not it. But the way that we combat that is having discussions like that, and like with 3 South Asian women, very different backgrounds, and we are complex beings, right? We all have our own shit, we all have our own struggles, we have our own lived experiences and things. But even in my own household, like my sister's experiences and my brother's experiences with racism are very different from mine. And so you can even be in this family dynamic. And I think the more conversations we have, the more it's going to confuse white people, because of the fact that they can see that everyone's different. Like every human on this planet is different. We need to have these conversations to first humanize ourselves, because we are not necessarily granted that right. And then we need to look at the other issues in this. But I think reporting has been so poor. Like I've been in the system for God knows how long, and yet there aren't necessarily records of these things. Like, and the thing is, the thing that really pisses me off is the fact that, you know, I was in the England setup. I was in like the football for all thing was in 2002 when I was appointed. So they have all these records somewhere. But then if you look at the conversations about South Asian women in sport, somehow I've been erased from that story. So has Pammy been erased from that story. And I think those are stories that were so important, because we also come from these cultures where it is so patriarchal, like society in general. But then when you put into the whole factor of South Asians in that equation, we are second-rate citizens, like in this equation. Like, my brother compared to us, like how many times in our everyday do we eat rotiya and stuff, and your mom is the last person to eat because she's making rotis for everyone else, right? And so there's all these things that just seeps into our everyday, and it's just normal when it's not. It shouldn't be normal. And I think the stories of, you know, if we're still hearing stories about Harpal Singh, about Anwar Adan, about, you know, Michael Chopra, and you were able to, at the same time as when Permi and I were playing, have records for the men, they should have had records for the women. And I think that would be a very different conversation if, like, for instance, Miriam was saying that, like, you didn't know about me until you literally like sent me an Instagram DM.
I think, I've only actually just realised this, but I think what's also really interesting about that comparison, yeah, it's because you're women and people don't care about women's football. They definitely didn't until 2 years ago. But something that I've been working on in this documentary is I think something that I haven't really seen anything on in the media ever, which is weird because it's like glaringly obvious. And maybe it's because I am able to talk about it because I'm not going to offend anyone, I don't think. But a massive majority of the South Asian players that make it are mixed heritage. So
Mhm.
yeah, they make it, but like we need to talk about the proximity to whiteness that is there because Michael Chopra, Jimmy Carter, who kind of came out as Asian 20 years later, all these people, and like Rosie and Molly Kamita, who have white
Mhm.
names,
Millie.
Neil Taylor, Millie, uh, Danny Bat, like we're getting some stats on it like commission, but it's a huge majority, and people don't talk about that. And
Yeah.
it's how much are we really changing things? And is it that when we think about like scouts and coaches already this year, pre-academy scout has like made a wild comment about stereotypes for South Asian players at Crystal Palace. It's 20,
Mhm.
it's January. That happened very early on in the year, right? And we're not talking enough, in my opinion, about like the perceptions, the misconceptions, the stereotypes that scouts still have. And I think it's really hard to deny that when you look at the link between like who is making it and their proximity to whiteness. So I
Mhm.
hadn't really thought about it until you just said it, like you and Permy, you aren't
Mhm.
you aren't from mixed heritage families, and you don't have white in you. I think you're part Fijian, is that right?
So my
Um,
dad's family went from Punjab to Fiji.
okay.
So they're Indian Fijian. So my grandma was born in Fiji, Indian Fijian, and my dad was born there, and then he moved when he was 4. So my grandparents liked our oppressors so much that after India's independence, they moved to the British colony of Fiji, and then they moved to the motherland of colonialism in England in the 1960s. And so yeah, like I think that's where I find comparisons in terms of I may not have a mixed race kind of heritage to me, but in terms of my story, in terms of my dad coming over so early, I think that is also a different kind of conversation as well. It's kind of almost like those mixed race more progressive kind of mindsets that we have, that it wasn't necessarily a religious or cultural kind of barrier per se, because my parents just wanted us just to be happy, and football made us happy, right? And so I think that's definitely one thing. But yeah, like and I think that's an exciting thing as well in terms of just having more brown faces. Like I'm not one of those people who is just like, oh, just because you're mixed race then you're going to be lesser, like you're not in, like, no, that's not how it works. That's not how the world works. Like there are white people who were born in India, right, and they speak fluent Hindi. So foodways and just the way that the world works is it's all about this kind of sharing thing that we have. But it is interesting to see how many more people and looking at their background. And that's the thing that we need to have conversation. And by we, I mean, this isn't an issue for FIFA, for the PFA, for the FA, for every organization, every club team to have these issues and these conversations. It shouldn't necessarily, like we said right at the beginning, it shouldn't necessarily be about us always have it. Like we can't keep on having, like, living our day to day and then having this heaviness of just having to navigate just life as a person of color, and then have to fix their problem, which white people caused. Like colonialism was started by that. And so it's exhausting as it is. And another point is we should be paid. Like anytime, I never made any money from my football career, never got compensated for any time. Like I did a lot of seva when it came to just talking to kids all throughout my career, whether it was Kick It Out, We Play Two, or the FA, and to have official titles as well. And I think that's where, if you really are really like committed to this and want to have progress, you need to first value the people who have knowledge that you don't have. And also acknowledge that there is an emotional output and labor attached to it. And it's a conversation that we don't like talking about racism and discrimination all the time. Like sometimes we just need joy, right? And that's what we're missing most of the time. And it's just like, if we can strike that balance where, yeah, we get to do this, but I think players who are just in the system right now just need to concentrate on playing and just doing the best that they can. They shouldn't have it as like, okay, you are the representation for a whole group of people. And there's like a shit ton of South Asians all across the world. Like, how can we say that my experience is going to be exactly the same as someone else when it's not?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think that's the main thing, isn't it? I feel like sometimes when we try to bring the issues to light, it's all painted with the same brush, same color, right? But like we said, we're all individuals. Our experience, look, just the three of us here, our experiences have all been extremely different. And like you've both said, there isn't one solution to it, but there has to be. I always ask I always ask the question because I've spoken to so many white people about this in positions of power, and they're all interested in trying to tackle this. And I'm thinking to myself when I'm talking to them, do they really care about the issue, or is it just because it's a hot topic? Do they really actually care about making a change? Like, do they actually want to do something?
I think there's enough of us wanting to have, like, pushing people to have these conversations.
Well, conversation, but that's just it. I got into a point where I'm like, we need implementation. We need
action.
Like actual action, actual outcomes. Like I come from a healthcare background, right? We have KPIs, we have outcomes, we have to prove our worth. We have to prove that actually what we're doing makes sense. We, I'm a pharmacist. I look at the evidence that a drug works. I'm looking at the evidence that actually these pathways that we have to manage different healthcare conditions actually work, right? And I suppose with that hat on, and because that's literally been my life, I'm like, there is no, I can't see any results. I can't see any outcomes. I see there's a lot of conversation. I can see there's people who are saying a lot of lip service, a lot of people saying that they're interested in wanting to do something about it without actually putting the effort in. Like, honestly, hand on heart, like Miriam, you're probably like the only person that I can actually actively see in the UK doing something to try to make an impact, that trying to make a change, trying to have an outcome, trying to have conversations. Like you and Dev actually you're both at Sky Sports. You're both trying so hard to make that happen. But the issue is that I'm finding is that we're always behind the scenes, we're never at the forefront. Why is it that it's always behind the scenes? Why is it never at the forefront? And even when I go to matches, when I go to games, right? I'm like, oh, hang on a second. I want to see who's working where. And actually, when you look at, you know, people who are on the pitch who are reporting, a lot of the time it is white people, or they have the token like, oh, colored person, or that's what they say. Like, and you're just like, well, this isn't representative. And then you look behind the scenes, the physiotherapists, the academy coaches, and everything like that. They're all Indian, they're all brown. And it's like, actually, what is their story? I'm actually interested to know. I'm actually interested to know that. I'm actually interested to know that actually we're making things happen. And I feel like from a fan perspective, right? So I'm talking as a fan. You guys both have been players and have worked in sports and everything like that. Me as a fan, I feel like as if I first felt that pang of, oh, I feel like as if something is missing when I went to the match, and I was just like, I'm proud of the girls that I'm seeing on the pitch. But why do I feel like as if I'm not part of it? Why do I feel a bit left out?
Yeah.
Why do I feel a bit awkward when I'm going to a match? I feel like as if I'm like one of the only brown people among the sea of white people. Like but it shouldn't really matter because we're all supporting the same team and everything like that. But it still feels awkward. And the more layers that you add onto that intersectionality and things like that, it it becomes more apparent. So I was talking to a few of the Arsenal fans just on Instagram, DMs and that sort of thing. And, we were talking about this intersectionality and stuff. And, they were saying like, oh, they feel really welcome when they go to a game because, firstly, they were with lots of different females, but because, they might also be gay or bi or something like that, they feel safer in that environment, right? And I'm like, just imagine what if you were not white, what if you were brown, what if you were gay, what if you were the only one there? You're adding different layers on top of that. It makes you feel more out of place.
No, but I think people think that like gay brown women don't exist.
They do. They do.
Genuinely, I think people just like forget that there are queer brown women, and so like they're never even part of the conversation. And obviously they exist. So many of them are not out publicly.
Mm-hmm.
That it might not be safe for them to be. It might not be worth like the daily stress for them to be. But like people totally erase them from conversations. And so like it's great that queer people feel great and that and safe in women's football. It's not a safe space for everyone. No one acknowledges that. Everyone's like, women's football is amazing. Oh, it's so good for LGBT fans. Okay, but like, is it good for all LGBT fans or just the white ones? Because we don't have those conversations, and that's why people aren't out, right? Like, because they don't feel like they can be.
We don't have those conversations as a community either very easily, or obviously with parents in this as well. Like when I was playing, like it didn't really like I enjoyed everyone's company. The thing, I think this is one of those things that's kind of interesting because not only do you, as a female footballer, you get asked, okay, firstly they think, okay, can you even play? Is the first one. Like then it's that, are you a girl or boy? And then the third one is, oh, she must be queer. And like I never seen none of those things mattered to me, because the fact that I love all my friends for who they are, right? So I don't get offended if somebody is going to say or assume my sexuality. Like, firstly, it's none of their fucking business. But like the game, I think for women's football to really be inclusive, like we need to have these conversations, because like if you're only looking at it through the one lens, which is a white lens, then yeah, it's a safe space for queer trans, like whatever community that is there, and feeling safe enough to buy season tickets to come all the time. But that's not, like Miriam said, it's not the case for everyone. And just having spaces where we feel like it's, we belong. We've always belonged in women's football. Like we like for the fact that like I have done it, and then Permi did it, and then we had all the other players that came through. Like it's not as though we don't play football. We have played football. We have excelled at the highest level. And so what is now happening? And I think it's just like you said, with like looking at the ethnic backgrounds of all of the players that are coming through and making it. It's not very difficult for the FA or whoever it might be to literally sit down with every single player and have their conversation and just record what their oral history is, so that we have it documented. Like, I don't understand why we have gone all this time and not have it a shareable document for everyone to access, whether you're a fan, whether you're just like a random brown person, or you're the FA, or you're the PFA, or FIFA. Like anyone can go into this resort and have like all these South Asians in football, who they played for, their Instagram handle, like whatever it might be, like what is their top level thing, because that's the only way. Like we keep on having these same old conversations, and everyone keeps on saying, oh, but South Asians are non-existent. No, you just haven't done the fucking work.
Yeah.
Or a Google search. Like, or I am fed up of people telling me that, oh, I knew of you, but I didn't know how to reach you. We are so connected, and the internet has been around for a really long time that literally you stick my name in there and like my website comes up.
Google is free. Google is free. Why are people so lazy? It's 2024. Grow up.
Yeah, right.
But to be fair, that's how I connected with the both of you, right? Like literally, just a DM to both of you. And I remember being really, really reluctant actually to reach out to Aman because I was like, Aman, it's Aman. Like, do you know what I mean? I was literally like that. And actually, when we had our first conversation, you were just so nice and you were just so welcoming. It just felt so like natural and normal, and and we just had so much productive conversations, and it I feel like as if I've known you for years, to be honest with you. Like that's how our conversation really felt. And so I can only thank you for that, for being so open as well to just having people contacting you and being able to like always share your story, always be willing to share your story, always to make time for this as well. Because it's not easy trying to change something for years and years and years and years and years. And I'm hoping that now we can kind of solidify this into history, because that's what we need to do. And I know, like, so I'm on this Arsenal chat. So the Arsenal Women Supporters Club, obviously everybody talks about them, how great they are with everything that they're doing to support the team and stuff. But so I'm part of the WhatsApp groups that anybody can join. And they are actually trying to do like a compilation of like the whole Arsenal women's history. They're trying to look for old photos. They're trying to look for when people played when, and you know they're proper digging through whatever archives and googling like crazy. Their fans are doing this off their own backs to actually find out, oh, I really want to find out what happened here, really want to find out what happened there. And they're doing this off their own backs. And actually, you know, they know of you, Aman. Like, you know, they're like, oh yeah, Aman Dosanj, we need to find out information about her. You know, they're actively trying to find information about you, you know, and I was felt so happy when I saw your name just kind of come up in the chat, and I was just like, this is good. Like this is what we need. We need that. We need that to happen. Like there isn't any of that like discrimination or anything like that. They're like, you're an Arsenal player. We love you. It's literally as simple as that. And that's what we're doing. Well, that's what they're trying to do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And I suppose, like I said before, my question is how do we, it always feels like as if a majority are trying to tell a minority how not to be a minority. And the question is, how do we need to, it almost feels like as if we need to get more ethnic diverse people in those positions of power where there can be real change. Because at the moment, I feel like as if I'm begging, and I shouldn't feel like as if I'm begging. Do you know what I mean?
And oh, after you.
This is just a quick point. I also think, and it was Sanjay Bandari who said this in an interview. I can't take credit, but I think it's really interesting. We don't have like an ally. You know how like women's football had like Ian Wright?
Mm-hmm.
It had a big star name who wasn't a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And Ian Wright has done so much for women's football, and no one will ever really like put into words like how much he's done for the sport. We don't have that with South Asians in football, and I think that would be really cool. That would be really cool if someone who wasn't Asian was just like, hey, look at all these South Asian players that we should talk about. Why are we not talking about? Why are people not making it? Like, why is it all mixed heritage players that make? If we had someone with a bit of star power, this is what Sanjay Bandari said, and I completely agree. I just don't see it happening. I just feel like it's not a thing that would happen that way round, and I don't know, it's sad because it could be really cool.
I think we should determine to make it happen. I'm gonna try. We'll try really hard, guys.
Ask him. We could just ask him to be the ally for everything.
and like Miriam and I had this conversation the last time we spoke as well. Like, I know that the lack of diversity in the Lioness squad, for instance, isn't necessarily directly linked to the players. Like, right, coaching staff, the scouts, all those kind of things are all interlinked. But players do have a responsibility of just advocating for us. Like, we can't just keep on advocating for ourselves. Like, for me, it just felt so lovely after so long to first hear from both of you through DMs, and want to, actively want to have, like, you're interested, like, for so long when people haven't been interested in what you do or seen the merit of it, like, it can send you in a bit of a dark and twisty place, right? But it was so lovely to reconnect, and then gently be guided back to sport, to literally be here and talking to you too, and then the Brown Girl event that's happening soon as well. But we also, when it came to the Arsenal lack of diversity, and a particular article that came out saying that we're non-existent in the sport, to have first Nirali send me a DM about it, and then post and say, oh, by the way, you're missing one person from this, and to have just for us to get to that point and have people advocating for you on your behalf, even though you're not there, that's one thing that is huge. Two, to have people who are young, aspiring storytellers who are now in storytelling positions of power and able to tell these things and give it the care and love that it deserves, that we necessarily haven't had in the past. And then the third thing is, I've played alongside Farrell Williams, Casey Stoney. Like, Casey and I were in the Arsenal setup. Like, firstly, we were roommates in England. She made fun of me because I was like literally doing my homework during one England camp, and I was like, I don't have time, it's due. I got an A-star, by the way, in that graphic design thing. Take that, Casey Stoney. Yeah, she was just, so we have. And then in the Arsenal reserves, I was playing alongside Alex Scott. I played with Rachel Yankee, who was also involved in Better Like Beckham as well. So there's like some really big names in terms of, they went on to have great careers and things. I think it's really important that people like that also step up and have a conversation and saying, by the way, when they're saying that these players are non-existent, you may not remember my name, that's fine. But just acknowledge the fact that there was somebody who wasn't white in the setup when you were in the setup. Because it just changes the narrative completely. Like, we can't start our story in 2024 and saying, oh, we've got all of these South Asians in the game, because our story starts so much earlier than that.
No, absolutely. And I'm hoping that whilst you're here, you'll be able to also reconnect with all of them. If possible, it would be like amazing. I'm calling it. I'm calling it.
I've always said, like, I've put myself out for years to the FA, like contacting the FA, especially after, when England lost to Italy in the Euros, and then everything kicked off, and it was a very transactional thing. Like, we love Sterling and all the black players as long as it's this transactional thing. As long as he's scoring, then he's like, it's all gravy, it's all great. But then the minute that something happens and it doesn't go our way, then everything, those feelings come out. And that's a really hard thing. And then obviously I wanted to be proactive with it. Like, I've been doing these anti-racism conversations and just sharing my stories for so many years, and you've got this resource that is willing to do it. Like, I've never asked for anything, just want things to get better so that my niece and nephew don't have to go through half the shit that I've had to go through, and then obviously pave the way so that we're actually thriving and not just surviving all the time. But no one gets back to you. Like, that's the thing. It's just like all these people, and it is so lazy when I keep on hearing the things, oh, we didn't have the means to contact you. Like, there's people in the FA that have been there, like Kelly Simmons, for instance. She's been there for donkey's years since I was in the setup. Like, 100% they know who I am. And so you can't just keep on erasing people, and just, you need to use that, like, just like, why are they, like, the whole thing with racism, like, you use people for their resources, but you're not even doing that well, white people. And so it's just like, it's really frustrating that we keep on having the same old conversation and we're not getting to it. And like, it shouldn't necessarily be up to the fans doing all this legwork when somebody is paid at these organizations to do this stuff. So why is it, like, that's the question I want to know, is like, why do we keep on getting erased from everything?